Good morning students. In this session we are going to learn about tests on aggregate. So in previous class we have seen the types of aggregates, how it is formed, and what is the basic ideal aggregates that should be used in concrete. Everything we have seen. Now we have just focusing on which type of test. In last class we have already dealt with the test and their components that should met with the aggregates when we are using for concrete. Now we are going in depth with the particle size, which we are going to do in your laboratory. So first one is particle size. So based on the particle size, we just differentiate with fine aggregate and the coarse aggregate. So in moisture content, we are going to see what is the water cement ratio, the specific gravity, water absorption. So what is the capacity of water absorption, or how much water can be absorbed by the aggregate. So 10% fine value, aggregate crushing value, what is the crushing strength, impact value. Impact value means sudden load when you given on the aggregate, what is the position of the aggregate we are going to see. So aberration value also we are going to check in the Los Angeles test, where we are going to keep some metal balls, steel balls, and we are going to see the wear and tear of the aggregate. So particle size, sieve analysis is called a particle size value. In determining the proportions of a particle with a certain ranges in aggregate by separation on various sieves of different size openings is defined as sieve analysis. So fineness modulus, so to find the sieve analysis, to find the different sizes of the aggregates, we just cumulate the percentage retained on each sieve by 100. So this is a practical test we are going to do in the laboratory. So the next one is flakiness, where you are going to insert in the gaps of the stand. Based on that, we are going to see the how much flaky stones are there in the aggregate. So apparatus are elongation gauge, that we call it as elongation gauge or thickness gauge. Based on the thickness of the aggregate, we are going to choose in which range the percentage is more. Based on that, we are going to choose that aggregate. So this is the thickness sheet or the gauge where we are going to insert the aggregate through it, and we are going to take the values. So this is the test procedure which we go through with the aggregate testing, and 63 mm, 6.63 mm to 6.3 mm with different sizes. And this is the table which you are taking from the testing of aggregate. So this is the test procedure. Next one, moisture content. How we are going to check the moisture content in the aggregate and absorption of the aggregate. We are going to keep it, take the aggregate test with the 2 kgs of aggregate, conduct on the test. So in the 2 kgs will be remove fine particles by washing it, and after that we are going to keep it in a dry cloth and weighed, and then you are going to keep initial weight you are going to take, and you keep it in oven for 100 to 110 degrees for 24 hours. Next, after 24 hours, aggregates are removed and cooled in airtight container and weighed. So water absorption, when you kept it in water for 24 hours, after taking out, what is the absorption, we are going to see by saying it. We are going to take the water absorption. So water absorption should not exceed 2%. So specific gravity can be done by the density of aggregate and density of water, and equally gives the volume of water. So specific gravity is usually certain computing the concrete mix, design or control work such as absolute volume of aggregate in concrete. It is not a measure of a quality of aggregates. So aggregates impacts value test. How the impact value test can be known? So aggregate impact value gives a relative measure to the resistance of an aggregate to sudden shock or impact. So sudden load has been, when sudden load has been given on the aggregate, what is the reaction, how it deals with it, whether it will withstand or whether it get trashed or get compressed. So based the toughness that we resistant impact resistance or sudden load on the aggregate can be known, which is nothing but a toughness. So due to movement of vehicles on the road or aggregate are subject to impact, resulting in their breakdown of smaller pieces. So it just convert into a small big one to the small pieces. So the aggregate should therefore have sufficient toughness to resist and their ingredients due to impact. The characteristics is measured by impact value test. The aggregate impact value is measure of resistance to sudden impact of shock, which may differ to the resistance or gradually applied a compressive load. So what are the apparatus and what is the IS codes we have, the testing machines, everything is detailed in this slide. So this is the impact test. We are keeping load on the aggregate. After that we sieve it, and whatever the retained on 14 mm retained and passing by 10 mm chipping, and so based on the aggregates we have taken, and the retention of the sieve will be taken at the percentage of a aggregate. So this is the test procedure, the strikes, and how we are going to blow it, how we are going to tamp it, and how we are going to give a impact loads on the aggregate. So recommended aggregate impact test value. So generally what is the impact value test that we consider for concrete. So aggregate impact value and classification should be less than 20% for exceptional strong, 10 to 20% for strong, 20 to 30% for satisfactory for road surfacing, which is greater than 35% weak or road surfacing. So based on that we utilize the aggregate with some or the other purposes. So aggregate crushing value. So what is the crushing value means? When you are using certain compressive load on the aggregate, how it reacts, how it is getting crushed, the compressive load, how much load that can be given, that gives nothing but the strength of the aggregate, and it is used in construction of roads and pavements. So based on that we are going to specify and classify this aggregate can be used for different purposes, and which aggregate have higher strength, and this this much compressive strength of the aggregate can be used for different purposes. So if you see courts aggregate crushing value is percentage by weight, and crushed material obtained with test aggregates by subjected to the specified load under standardized conditions. So aggregate crushing value is numerical index of the strength of aggregate, and it is used in construction of roads and pavements. So these are the apparatus which we are going to go for it and do this test on compressive testing machine. CTM, we call it as short form as CTM, and cylindrical metal measures and sufficient rigidity, retain and everything. So balance capacity is 3 kg and accurate on a gram, and what is the tamping rod 16 mm diameter and 45 to 60 centimeter long, rounded at one end. So we are going to take the apparatus and see. So this is how we are going to do, and this is the cylindrical measure, and this is a mold, rod and plunger which we are going to use it for it. And this is the procedure, you can see it. Aggregate crushing strength of 40 tons we can load it, and 10% fineness test and radius, and sieves can be used like 2.36 mm seam after fineness passing of aggregate, mold filled with 14 to 10 mm chipping to depth of 100 mm. So next the testing on load, the load is gradually applied on the aggregate, not like one aggregate. We are going to keep it with a certain depth of the aggregates, and then we can go for the strength of it. So apparatus dimensions are already given on the slide, and the dimensions, height and the diameter of the plunger, as everything has been given. So 10% fineness test. So what is the fineness test of the aggregate? Can be known that resistance the aggregate to crush or applied on the aggregate. The small test can be conducted on surface dry aggregates passing through the 12.5 mm sieve and retained on 10 mm sieve. So this is oven for the period and where you can going to keep it in a 100 to 1100 degree centigrade temperature. So this is the test procedure and which we are going to deal with it in laboratory as well. And how we are going to calculate and what is the fall range like 7.5 to 12.5 has been given. So aggregate aberration value, this can be done by Dewell machine or Los Angeles machine, where we are going to add certain steel balls to determine the wear and tear of a aggregate, and based on that we are going to say it and rotate it for certain. So this is the Los Angeles test, where you can see this is the Los Angeles test, where you can see 30 to 50% as payments. Next one. Thank you. In the next class we are going to see about admixtures.